Шановні журналісти, вітання. Зараз будемо говорити на тему останнього.
And now we are going to speak about the last binding threat to the peninsula procedure for the entry and exit from the temporarily occupied territory of Crimea. Our speakers are Iryna Dumych, project coordinator at the Center for Civil Liberties, Olha Skrypnyck, deputy head of the Crimea Field Mission on Human Rights, Viktoriya Savchuk, head of the legal department at Krym SOS. Good day. I'm Iryna Dumych, and I represent the Center for Civil Liberties. And on the 4th of June, the Cabinet of Ministers
the Cabinet of Ministers approved the procedure for entering and leaving the administrative border with the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, which restricted the ability for many people to visit Crimea. That procedure called a lot of protests from the civil society, and there were requests to change this procedure. The Ministry of Justice reacted to that, and they suggested to create the platform to introduce amendments to this procedure. We would like to thank the Ministry of Justice for that, the Deputy Minister Sergei Petukhov, especially who organized this platform of cooperation between the authorities and public. Why is it important, and what will the new procedure look like? My colleagues will talk about that, and they will mention the amendments which we failed to add to the procedures, and we in the future will insist on making these amendments. I'm Daria Sviridova. I'm the lawyer at the Ukrainian Helsinki Human Rights Union. Today we present a very positive experience of cooperation between the public and the authorities, the cooperation with the Ministry of Justice, who well reacted to many complaints against the procedure. We cannot say that the procedure is such that does not restrict the freedom of movement of the citizens of Ukraine and that does not violate the human rights, but there are many changes which address many problems as to daily crossing of the cross points were addressed. So what were the amendments developed together with the Ministry of Justice? Which of them were approved? The result of the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers. So I would like to say what is very important is that the list of grounds to enter, to get the permit to enter the territory of Crimean Peninsula were expanded. Especially it concerns the category, the lawyers, the journalists were included into the list of such people. Why it was so important? Another important change was that the procedure of getting the permit for people who are married was simplified. You remember that we were receiving many complaints that the couples cannot get permits because in Crimea there are, for example, the relatives of only the wife. Now anyone can get a permit out of the couple if the relatives of one of them lives on the territory of Crimea. Also, another amendment is canceling the requirement to give the financial proof of your, to give the proof of your financial status also. My colleagues will talk about other issues, but as I have mentioned already, the whole process of introducing changes was not so easy. Unfortunately, not all the suggested amendments were accepted. We believe that many of these changes are very important. I would like to mention two of them which unfortunately have not been supported by government. First, that is the lack, there's no possibility to give such a permit to those people who are outside of Ukraine, because now the foreigners have to come to Ukraine physically, and the time of waiting for the permit is not regulated. So such documents there should be the possibility provided to provide such documents online. Second, that it is impossible to get a multi-entry permit if the reason indicated to get the permit is relatives in the Crimea or assets in the Crimea. This is just the grounds to get one entry permit. And the key issues which have not been addressed, these are the issues related to the citizens of Ukraine. As we have mentioned before, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine was not authorized to regulate the issue of enter and exit to and from the territory of Crimea of the citizens of Ukraine. The legislation of Ukraine regulates the issue of freedom of movement of the citizens of Ukraine in such a way that any limitations in movements along the territory could be established only by the laws. You understand? A very big request, please speak slower. We have translation going on. Any changes, any restrictions to the freedom of movement which could be established by the state could be established only in accordance to the law. Unfortunately, this procedure regulates also the issue of crossing of the cross points by the citizens of Ukraine. And this is about the powers given to the representatives of the border service to refuse the citizens in entering or exiting the territory of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. That is the interference into freedom of movement. This issue is to be addressed, as I've mentioned, by the law, and these are the powers of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine only. And even the law on the laws did not empower the Verkhovna Rada, did not empower the Cabinet of Ministers to pass any provisions that would limit the movement of the citizens of Ukraine along the territory of Ukraine. Basically, the state may have the reasons, but it should be substantiated by the state, and it should be included into the document which is the law of Ukraine.
На жаль, залишається норма, яка сьогодні дозволяє працівникам
There is one more norm which allows the bodyguards to refuse a person in entry to the continental part of Ukraine. We believe that that norm should be excluded from the procedure. If we presume that the territory of Crimean Peninsula is the territory of Ukraine, we cannot prohibit any person to enter the territory which is controlled, even though if a person violates the law. Even if the person violates the law, we believe that the state should address the issue of what to do with such a person on the controlled by the government territory.
особи, але відправляти
To send the person back to the occupied territory, this should not be done to the citizens of Ukraine or to foreigners. The person who was deprived of the possibility to leave Crimea, even when they get a written refusal to enter the continental part, they cannot appeal against it, because you know in the territory of Crimea there are no courts where you can go in accordance with Ukrainian laws. There's no even postal communication with the territory of Crimea. As I've mentioned, we hope that we will continue this cooperation. We understand there was an urgent need to make amendments, to make changes that the society demanded. There was no time to wait for. It's good that there were some positive changes made, but we do hope that the dialogue with NGOs will continue. And that the violations will be removed during the legislative work of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Thank you to my colleagues. I would add as to changes which are there. First thing, what concerned us was the issue of children who suffered because the problem of documents. The amendments were introduced into that, but in general the practice will be the same. Entry to Crimea for the citizens of Crimea under for the citizens of Ukraine under 16 will be regulated according to the norm of crossing the state border. And that means that children should have the foreign passport. You need to understand that in accordance to these provisions and to these changes, people have to get a passport. But the citizens of Ukraine get passport when they are 16, and children have to leave before they are 16, so it's still the issue of getting the foreign passport. There's also change as to children concerning leaving the territory of Crimea. Now, the parents, one of them could, when there is only one representative of parents, they can leave Crimea with this child. It was impossible to do that before because they would demand the notary certified agreement from the second parent. But now when the child enters Crimea, then the norm is to get this document, the permit from another parent. The grounds have been expanded, the grounds for getting special permits for foreigners. There are no more grounds, but this does not address all the problems, but there are some positive changes. That is what we called upon as Crimean field mission We were insisting on journalists and lawyers to be able to go there, to get access there. There's another thing which allows to not just international official delegations and diplomatic missions to get permit, but also NGOs can get the permit which are not Ukrainian, foreign NGOs, and that opens the opportunity for advocates and independent advocacy missions can also get the permit. They need to have the supporting documents from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, but there's no norm that would address the issue of access of lawyers to Crimea. So we do not understand whether the lawyers will be able to get these permits today. And it's more about Russian lawyers, because now only Russian lawyers that have Russian license can defend our citizens in Crimea. There's also one more norm concerning religious communities. They can also get the special permit. And that was a big problem in summer when many Muslims could not get to their relatives to Crimea for an important holiday. Now they can do it if they get an approval from the Ministry of Culture. Another important change is access of foreign journalists. This is a separate norm now, and the journalists can get to Crimea if approved by the Ministry of Information Policy. There's one more norm, ability to get special permit for foreigners who go to Crimea in order to visit certain events of Majlis of Crimean Tatar people. However, there is a norm which could cause some disputes because you have to personally apply to get the special permit, but also the Majlis can apply, can submit the document, but it's not clear whether that means that Majlis can submit the documents in advance. So we will need to get some more explanations in detail so that there are no disputes about that norm. I agree with the colleagues that this is a good experience and we do hope that it will continue because there are many unresolved outstanding issues for our citizens who live on the occupied territory of Crimea. And we call upon other bodies to cooperate, as well as the Ministry of Justice. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Viktoriya Savchuk. I am from the Krym SOS legal department. Our initiative has been working on the issues of IDPs, and our activity started with the work with the IDPs from Crimea. So crossing the border for us is a very painful issue. As to the procedure, I would like to mention one thing: the access of notaries to the cross points at the administrative border. This is very important innovation. For the citizens of Ukraine and the persons without citizenship who leave the territory of Crimea, because if our workers of Kherson office, they registered cases at the administrative border when an old a grandmother would take a grandchild outside of Crimea, and such people would be detained at the administrative border and would be sent back. Because all these notary certified papers of Crimea are not recognized on the territory of Ukraine. It was very difficult to take children outside of Crimea if the parents failed to go to the continental territory of Ukraine and have such a permit. Now the procedure of leaving the Crimea for children under 16 with one of the parents is simplified, but we understand the children travel with other relatives, so this norm improves and reduces the risk of problematic situations which were taking place at the administrative border. Besides, this access of notaries could address the problem of getting the documents at the continental part of Ukraine if a person has just the power of attorney. If a person wants to get the copy of the birth certificate and because of some reasons cannot go out of Crimea, at the control point they can give the power of attorney to some people and they can help this person to get such documents. I also would like to mention another positive thing, and that is expanding the terms of getting the permits for foreigners. One of the conditions is expanding the circle of relatives, as Daria has mentioned. Some people would call us who wanted to enter Crimea with the husband who was foreigner, but he was not allowed to go there because he would indicate that he goes to his mother-in-law, and mother-in-law is not a direct relative, and he would be refused. Another important condition is getting a special permit by foreigners who have residence in Ukraine. If a person who resides on the territory of Crimea and after the occupation did not go abroad, such a person can go to the continental part of Ukraine, presenting this certificate of residence. Also, there are many issues which are not regulated by the procedure, and we continue to lobby that together with the authorities. We are grateful for such cooperation, and we believe that such coordination of efforts between the civil sector and authorities is so important to ensure rights and freedoms for IDPs. Another problem is passports for people on the territory of Crimea, issuing new passports. if the passport is lost and so on, if the name is changed, especially if the passport is damaged or lost, then it is very difficult for a person to leave Crimea to go to the continental part of Ukraine, because there's no document. There might be the situation that the person will be blocked on the territory of peninsula. That's one of the examples of what we need to do and what we need to improve in our work, but we do hope that the changes which were adopted will help the freedom of movement. But we shouldn't forget that we have what to achieve in our work. Thank you.
Ходимо до запитань. Чи є ж у журналістів запитання або
Do you have any questions, or do you want to clarify anything? Do I have to go somewhere to pick up all the papers, or do I need to show them at the border line, or do I need to go somewhere in Kiev to get some documents? The body which issues the special permits, if you are a foreigner, is the State Migration Service. If you are in Kiev, then on the one hand, it says that you address any territorial division. In practice, we would address such departments in Kiev. That is Department on State Migration Service in Kiev, Bereznikovskaya Street 4A. Then there are some departments in the State Customs Service in Kherson region. If you are just the citizen of Ukraine, you should do nothing. You should take a passport of the citizen of Ukraine. You can go there and you demonstrate, show it to the bodyguards. If it's a foreigner, or if these are the journalists, they first go to the Ministry of Information Policy. If that is a religious community, they first go to the Ministry of Culture and get the support letter. If this is the person that goes to some events of Majlis, they first address Majlis. It's not that simple procedure. Especially, I believe that the support letters are to be received from the state bodies or non-state bodies, if we are talking about Majlis of Crimean Tatar people. But still, the special permit is issued. If I want to go to Crimea, I come to the cross point in Kherson region with passport. I don't have to prove that I have relatives in Crimea. If you're a citizen of Ukraine, if you're above 16, the only restriction for you is
України та є таким, що надає підставу для перетину цих пунктів.
you just need the passport of the citizen of Ukraine. That is the foreign passport. And that document will be sufficient to enter or leave the territory. But even the presence of that document is not the guarantee that you will be let in or let out, because there are certain grounds because of which even the citizens of Ukraine may get a refusal to cross the administrative border.
ті пункти, згідно яких можуть не впустити?
Наприклад,
For example, there are item 38-39 of the resolution the bodyguard can refuse you if you violate certain sanitary norms. And there's the list of some very general grounds. That creates grounds for abuse. The procedure doesn't have the list of grounds, which I could read and understand. If I do that, then I will not be allowed to enter. But also, all you need is the passport of the citizen of Ukraine.
Голос Криму. Скажіть, будь ласка,
You say that there are changes that the government did not support. Will you be providing some recommendations to the government so that such changes are passed? I believe that definitely we do hope that we will continue cooperation in a working group. Second, as I've mentioned, certain changes require not just the work of the Cabinet of Ministers but the Parliament, because the restrictions which are in the resolution are to be regulated at the legislative level. We do plan to cooperate and introduce certain amendments. I agree with Daria, we will continue to cooperate because we are not ideal. And we will try to check it all in practice. But we hope that we will be able to prove that we need to introduce amendments. I believe that that is still what we will be using. And I would like to mention that talking about other changes, it is important the amendments are to be introduced into the legislation of Ukraine. Maybe some laws are to be cancelled, like the law on free economic zone. And I hope that we will be able to cooperate with the Ministry of Justice and the MPs. So again, we are calling for cooperation. We do hope that such cooperation will continue. And we would like to mention, Daria said that also it's not just the Cabinet of Ministers, but also the Verkhovna Rada that should be involved. And I would like to say that we need to work with different specialists, with different representatives of the government and Verkhovna Rada to introduce amendments into different types of legislation. In this sense, to involve other bodies. This should be a very comprehensive work, but not just the work with one ministry, because for real changes we need to coordinate the efforts of all stakeholders.
момент хочу додати.
I would like to add one more thing. We hope that there will be more changes, but also we need to inform about it many people in Crimea have no access to internet, and we need to understand that Ukraine should, together with NGOs, do a lot to disseminate all the information. The website of the Cabinet of Ministers is not enough for people in Crimea to get information. But secondly, we need to look for some other ways. The cross points could be places where people will be getting all this information. If there are notaries there that will simplify all the work. We have railway which goes to Nova Alexeyevka, and again we can disseminate the information via railway trains, because people are in a very restricted information space. It is difficult for people to know what's happening in Ukraine, so we would be grateful if journalists help us disseminate that information. No more questions. Thank you for presentation. We will know how to get to Crimea. Our working day is over.